Saturday afternoon in downtown Los Angeles was vibrant, the kind of day where California's sun transformed skyscraper windows into golden mirrors, where tourists photographed the financial district, and where workers like Amara Johnson savored their rare free moments. She walked down Wilshire Boulevard holding her daughter Zuri's small hand, the 5-year-old's excitement evident in every animated skip, her yellow sunflower dress swaying like sunshine in motion. Zuri's braids were decorated with colorful bows, purple, pink, blue, that her mother had carefully woven that morning. "Mommy, can I have ice cream?" Zuri asked, her brown eyes sparkling. "After lunch, baby girl," Amara replied, squeezing her daughter's hand. She wore her cleaning uniform, light blue polo with the Grand Imperial Hotel logo embroidered on the chest, khaki pants, worn white sneakers. At 29, Amara carried exhaustion beyond her years, but her eyes maintained quiet dignity. Widowed 3 years, her husband Derek killed serving overseas, she worked double shifts to keep Zuri fed, clothed, and dreaming. The black Mercedes Maybach S680 pulled up with aggressive precision, its $200,000 price tag evident in every gleaming curve. The driver's door swung open with careless force, the heavy panel slamming directly into Amara's hip and sending her stumbling backward into Zuri. "Mommy!" Zuri cried as both nearly fell. The driver emerged. Hassan Khalid, 6'3" of ex-military muscle poured into a black suit. He didn't glance at them, didn't acknowledge the impact, didn't apologize. The rear door opened and Rashid Al-Mansour stepped onto the sidewalk like a sultan surveying conquered territory. 52, 6'1", he wore a charcoal Armani suit worth more than Amara made in 4 months. His Rolex Daytona gleamed gold. His cologne, Tom Ford, $300 per bottle, announced his presence before his voice did. He was on his phone, speaking rapid Arabic about oil futures worth hundreds of millions. Omar Bashir, his nervous assistant, scurried around with an iPad. Viktor Petrov, the Russian security specialist, emerged. Arms crossed, face expressionless. Rashid ended his call and looked at Amara and Zuri. His eyes scanned her cleaning uniform, worn sneakers, protective stance. His lip curled. "Move," he said in accented English, waving dismissively. "You are blocking the hotel entrance." "We're on a public sidewalk," Amara said quietly, voice steady. "Your driver hit us with the car door. You could apologize." The audacity of her response genuinely surprised Rashid. His eyebrows rose. Hassan's hand moved toward his waist. "Apologize?" Rashid repeated. "You want me to apologize to you? If you believe in standing up against arrogance and discrimination, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next will restore your faith in karma." Rashid stepped closer. "Do you have any idea who I am? I could buy you. I could buy your daughter. I could buy your entire lineage with what I spend on lunch." "Sir, I'm just asking for basic respect," Amara said, steel beneath her voice. "A simple sorry costs you nothing." "Costs me nothing?" His voice rose, drawing attention. David Chen paused in his restaurant doorway, phone ready. Maria Rodriguez stopped arranging flowers. "What costs me nothing is replacing people like you. You are what, a cleaner? Someone who scrubs toilets for pennies?" "I am a professional cleaner, yes," Amara said, lifting her chin. "I work hard. There's no shame in honest work." "No shame?" Rashid laughed cruelly. "Look at yourself. Look at what you're wearing. You smell like cleaning chemicals and desperation. Your daughter is wearing a dress from a charity bin. And you dare to ask me for an apology. People like you should be grateful I even acknowledge your existence." Zuri peeked from behind her mother's legs, small face confused. "Mommy, why is the man being mean?" "Because your mother doesn't understand her place," Rashid said, directing words at Zuri with condescension. "This is what your people's future looks like. You'll grow up to scrub floors just like Mommy. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll clean my hotels someday." "Don't talk to my daughter," Amara said, voice dropping dangerously. Whatever issue you have is with me. Or what? Rashid stepped closer. Call the police? You think they care about someone like you? You are nothing. Your daughter is nothing. You exist to serve people like me. That's when Amara noticed the scratch, faint on the Mercedes's rear door, barely visible. Rashid followed her gaze, eyes narrowing. You, he said venomously. You did that. You scratched my car. What? No, Don't lie to me. Rashid's explosion was volcanic. Spit flew as he jabbed his finger. I know what people like you do. This car costs more than you'll make in your pathetic life. $200,000. I didn't touch your car, Amara said firmly. Liar! Rashid grabbed her arm, fingers digging deep enough to bruise. Zuri screamed. Maria dropped her roses. Jennifer Walsh, an Australian tourist, called out, Oi! Leave her alone! Rashid twisted Amara's arm, dragging her toward the car. You want to damage my property? Then you'll fix it. Right now. Get on your knees and clean it. Show your daughter what happens when animals try to harm their betters. Let go of me! Amara tried to pull free, but Hassan moved in, grabbing her other arm. Together they forced her down, pushing her toward the sidewalk, toward her knees. Mommy! Zuri cried, small fists pounding uselessly against Hassan's leg. Let go of my mommy! Shut that brat up, Rashid snapped. Victor moved toward Zuri with mechanical efficiency. Don't you touch my daughter? Amara's voice cracked with desperation. She fought, adrenaline giving strength. But it wasn't enough. They forced Amara to her knees on concrete, palms scraping rough sidewalk. Pain was immediate, skin tearing, blood welling, but nothing compared to hearing Zuri's terrified screams. Victor grabbed the 5-year-old massive hand wrapping around her thin arm, lifting her off the ground as she kicked and flailed. Please, Amara begged, all dignity gone. Please don't hurt her. I'll do whatever you want, just don't hurt my baby. Then clean it, Rashid commanded, pushing her face toward the scratch. Clean it with your bare hands. And maybe, I'll let you and your little ghetto child leave. The crowd grew. 20 people, 30, phones out, recording. But nobody moved to help. Hassan, frustrated by Amara's resistance, grabbed her braids and slammed her forehead against the car door. The impact was brutal, metallic. Blood immediately streamed from a gash above her eyebrow, running down her face, dripping onto her uniform, onto the sidewalk. Mommy! Zuri's scream was primal, beyond words, pure animal terror. Amara's hands went to her head, trying to stop bleeding, stay conscious. She tasted copper, heard ringing. Now you're getting blood on my car, Rashid said with annoyance. Hassan, throw her in the gutter where she belongs. Hassan dragged Amara away, knees scraping concrete, blood leaving a trail. He dumped her on the curb next to a storm drain, where she collapsed, barely conscious, her cleaning uniform now soaked with blood and dirt. Please! Zuri was hysterical, fighting Victor with every ounce of 5-year-old strength. Please help my mommy! Somebody help my mommy! Please! 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 The desperation in that child's voice, the raw, unfiltered terror, cut through the afternoon air like a knife. The kind of sound that reached into your chest and squeezed your heart. The kind of sound that demanded response. And it was heard. From 3 blocks away, the first rumble started. Low. Deep. Mechanical thunder that rattled windows and set off car alarms. The sound grew louder, closer, multiplying. Not one engine, but many. 15. 20. The crowd's attention shifted from Amara bleeding on the curb to the street, where the first motorcycle appeared around the corner of Wilshire Boulevard. A Harley-Davidson Fat Boy, jet black with chrome accents, customized with extended forks and ape hanger handlebars. The rider wore black leather from head to toe, a vest, a cut, with patches that made seasoned Angelinos take unconscious steps backward. Devil's Riders MC, the winged skull with flames in blood red. The bottom rocker, California. The top rocker, National. Then came another bike, and another, and another. They arrived in military formation, 2 columns, engines synchronized. 15 motorcycles pulled up in a perfect semicircle around Rashid's Mercedes, boxing it in, their riders killing engines simultaneously. The sudden silence, the absence of that mechanical thunder, was somehow more ominous than the noise had been. The lead rider dismounted. 55 years old, but built like violence itself, 6'2" of corded muscle and prison tattoos, his weathered face mapping 5 decades of hard living. His cut displayed his full patch. President. Devil's Riders MC National, Marcus Iron Hawk Johnson. Behind him, 14 more bikers dismounted in perfect synchronization. Jake Viper Morrison, the VP, moved to Marcus's right. Raymond Bear Thompson, Sergeant at Arms, 300 pounds of controlled aggression, flanked his left. Antonio Falcon Ruiz, Derek Spike Williams, Samuel Ghost Patterson, Trevor Reaper Collins, every single one wearing full patches. Marcus walked forward slowly, his boots, steel-toed, worn leather, crunching on broken glass. His eyes scanned the scene, the blood trail. Amara collapsed by the storm drain, the little girl in the yellow dress screaming while a Russian guerrilla held her off the ground. His eyes, cold, calculating, the eyes of a man who'd killed in 2 wars and slept just fine afterward, settled on Rashid al-Mansour. "Someone want to tell me," Marcus said, his voice quiet but carrying absolute authority, "why that woman is bleeding. Why that child is screaming." Rashid, for the first time since stepping out of his Mercedes, felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Not fear, not yet, but uncertainty. These weren't police he could bribe. These weren't security guards he could have fired. These were men who existed outside the structures Rashid understood. "This is none of your concern," Rashid said, recovering some arrogance. "This is private. I suggest you and your friends leave before you're arrested." Marcus didn't respond immediately. He walked past Rashid, completely ignoring him as if he weren't worth acknowledgement, and knelt beside Amara. His calloused hand, gentle despite its size, touched her shoulder. "Hey, can you hear me?" Amara's eyes fluttered, focused, and widened with recognition. "Uncle Marcus?" she whispered, her voice thick with pain and confusion. The temperature on Wilshire Boulevard dropped 10 degrees. Block 2. The expression that crossed Marcus Iron Hawk Johnson's face made hardened criminals reconsider their life choices. This wasn't anger, it was something colder, more surgical. The look of a man calculating exactly how much pain he could legally inflict before crossing lines he'd spent 3 decades learning to navigate. His jaw clenched so tight the muscles jumped. His hand, still cradling Amara's bleeding head with shocking gentleness, trembled. Not with weakness, but with the effort of restraining violence that wanted to explode outward like a grenade. "Your niece?" Rashid's voice cracked slightly, the first real hint of fear creeping in like ice water down his spine. This woman is your Amara Johnson," Marcus said softly, still kneeling, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who'd commanded men in combat and led the most feared motorcycle club on the West Coast. "My baby brother Derek's widow. My goddaughter Zuri's mother." He looked up at Victor, who still held the screaming 5-year-old suspended in the air like a rag doll. The look in Marcus's eyes could have melted steel. Put the child down. Now. Viktor Petrov had faced Chechen rebels in Grozny, had worked security for Russian oligarchs who made their fortunes in blood, had stared down armed cartels in Mexico City without flinching. But something in Marcus Johnson's voice, something primal and absolutely certain, made his fingers open automatically. Zuri dropped to the ground, stumbled, then ran to her mother, throwing herself across Amara's chest, sobbing so hard her small body shook. Marcus stood slowly, and the movement had the terrible grace of a predator rising before a kill. He was 55 years old, but 35 of those years had been spent in the Devil's Riders MC, with 2 tours in Iraq before that, with a body count that existed in sealed military files and whispered legend. The afternoon sun caught the patches on his cut, Purple Heart, Combat Action Ribbon, and below those, the rockers that made cops nervous and criminals disappear. President, National, Devil's Riders MC. The reaction from his club was immediate and visceral. Bear stepped forward, his 300-pound frame blocking any exit route toward the hotel. Viper moved to cover the street side, hand resting casually on his belt where a chain hung, 8 feet of hardened steel that could break bones or worse. Spike pulled out his phone, already making calls, his voice low and urgent. "Yeah, we got a situation. Downtown. Wilshire and Grand. All available brothers, full patch, 10 minutes. Falcon positioned his bike to block the intersection. Ghost's hand disappeared inside his cut, where everyone knew he kept things that weren't exactly street legal. Reaper cracked his knuckles with sounds like breaking branches. Rashid Al-Mansour, for the first time in his 52 years of absolute privilege, felt genuine fear settle into his bones. The diplomatic plates on his Mercedes suddenly seemed irrelevant. His billions in oil money felt meaningless. Hassan and Omar and Victor, all his security, all his muscle, looked suddenly inadequate against 14 bikers who moved with military precision and carried themselves like men who'd faced death and decided they didn't care. "Listen," Rashid said, his voice trying to recover its earlier arrogance but failing, coming out higher, thinner. "I don't know who you think you are, but I have diplomatic immunity. I am personal friends with senators, with governors. One phone call and—" "One phone call," Marcus interrupted, his voice still quiet, still controlled, but with an edge like a razor. "And I'll have 200 Devil's Riders surround this block. Another call, and every news station in Los Angeles will have the video of you beating a widow and terrorizing a 5-year-old child. Another call, and your embassy will be so buried in scandal they'll deport you just to make it stop." He took one step closer to Rashid. Just one. But it was enough to make the billionaire take an involuntary step backward. "You want to play the phone game?" "Let's play." Bear was already pulling out his phone. "Want me to call the brothers, Prez?" "Not yet," Marcus said, his eyes never leaving Rashid. "I want to hear his explanation first. I want to understand why a man with everything, money, power, success, decided that beating a cleaning woman in front of her daughter was how he wanted to spend his Saturday afternoon." "She damaged my car," Rashid protested, pointing at the barely visible scratch on the Mercedes. That scratch was there when you parked," David Chen called out from his restaurant doorway, his phone held high. "I've got it on video. Your car already had that mark when you pulled up. You can see it clear as day in the footage." "I saw it too," Maria Rodriguez added, her accent thick but her voice strong. "That scratch was already there. This man, he just wanted to hurt someone. Wanted to feel big by making someone else feel small." Jennifer Walsh, the Australian tourist, stepped forward with her husband. "We recorded the whole thing, mate. Every word, every action. You're done." The crowd, now 50 people strong, maybe more, began murmuring agreement. Phones were everywhere, a forest of cameras all pointed at Rashid, all capturing everything. In the age of viral videos and social media justice, Rashid Al-Mansour was about to become the most hated man on the internet, and somewhere in his mind, beneath the arrogance and entitlement, he was beginning to understand that. "I want to press charges," Marcus said, and now his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Assault, battery, child endangerment, hate crime enhancement." He looked down at Amara, still bleeding on the curb, Zuri clutched to her chest. "Amara, you hear me? We're pressing charges, all of them." "Uncle Marcus," Amara whispered, her voice weak but gaining strength. I I was trying to keep Zuri away from— I know, baby girl. I know. Marcus knelt again, his hand on her shoulder. Derek made me promise to look after you both. I respected your choice to step back, to build a different life. But this? He gestured at her bleeding forehead, at Zuri's tear-stained face, at the blood trail on the sidewalk. This ends now. Your family. She's family. And nobody touches family. The word family rippled through the Devil's Riders like an electric current. In the one-percenter world, in the outlaw motorcycle club culture, family was everything. Blood or chosen didn't matter. You protected family, you avenged family, you died for family, and Rashid Al-Mansour had just assaulted family in front of witnesses, in front of cameras, in front of the one man in California who had both the resources and the absolute lack of fear necessary to destroy him. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Someone had called 911, probably multiple someones. The LAPD was coming, and with them, the full weight of the American justice system that Rashid had so casually dismissed minutes earlier. Captain Robert Henderson arrived first, stepping out of his patrol car with the weariness of a 25-year veteran who'd seen everything Los Angeles could throw at him. He was 48, white, graying at the temples, and he knew exactly who Marcus Johnson was. Everyone in the LAPD knew. The Devil's Riders existed in that gray zone, not quite criminals, not quite legal, definitely dangerous, but generally staying just on the right side of the law enough that taking them down required more resources than the city wanted to spend. "Marcus," Henderson said, his tone carefully neutral, "want to tell me what's happening here?" "That man," Marcus pointed at Rashid without looking at him, "assaulted my niece in front of her 5-year-old daughter, slammed her head into his car, left her bleeding on the curb, traumatized a child. All because he thought she scratched his Mercedes, which she didn't. Multiple witnesses, multiple videos. I want him arrested. Now." Henderson looked at Amara, at the blood soaking her uniform, at little Zuri clinging to her mother and shaking with sobs. He looked at the crowd of witnesses, at the phones still recording. He looked at Rashid Al-Mansour, at Hassan and Victor and Omar, at the Mercedes with its diplomatic plates. "Sir," Henderson addressed Rashid, "I'm going to need you to stay right there while we sort this out." "I have diplomatic immunity," Rashid said, his voice regaining some confidence now that police had arrived. "I am protected under international law. You cannot arrest me. I demand to speak with the UAE embassy immediately." "Diplomatic immunity doesn't cover assault," Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell said, emerging from a second patrol car. She was 41, black, and had spent 15 years working sex crimes and domestic violence. The moment she saw Amara's condition, saw Zuri's terror, her expression hardened into something glacial. "It covers official acts in official capacity. Beating a woman on a public street isn't official business. You're getting arrested, charged, and you'll face trial like anyone else." "This is outrageous!" Rashid's voice rose to something approaching panic. "Do you know who I am? I will have your badges. I will—" "You'll shut up and put your hands behind your back," Mitchell said, pulling out handcuffs, "or I'll add resisting arrest to the charges." The next few minutes unfolded with the surreal precision of bureaucracy meeting street justice. Hassan, Omar, and Victor were detained for questioning. Rashid Al-Mansour, billionaire, CEO, man who'd bought his way out of consequences his entire life, was read his Miranda rights on a downtown Los Angeles sidewalk while 50 people filmed and the Devil's Riders watched with grim satisfaction. Paramedics arrived, immediately attending to Amara. "Ma'am, you need stitches. Possible concussion. We need to transport you to County General." "My daughter," Amara started. "I've got her," Marcus said, scooping Zuri up with practiced ease despite the little girl's initial fear of this large, tattooed stranger. "Hey, Zuri Bear, you remember Uncle Marcus? I used to give you horsey rides when you were tiny." Zuri's sobs quieted slightly. She looked at Marcus with red, swollen eyes. You're Daddy's brother?" "That's right, baby girl. Your daddy was my little brother. best man I ever knew." Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "And he made me promise to always protect you and your mama. I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner, but I'm here now, and I'm never letting anyone hurt you again." That simple promise, delivered in Marcus Johnson's gravel voice, somehow reached through Zuri's trauma. She wrapped her small arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder, her body still shaking but the hysteria fading into exhausted whimpers. As the ambulance pulled away with Amara inside, as Rashid was loaded into a patrol car still protesting his diplomatic immunity, as the crowd slowly dispersed with their viral videos already uploading to every social media platform imaginable, Marcus stood on Wilshire Boulevard holding his goddaughter and made phone calls. First call, his lawyer. "Jerry, it's Marcus. I need you on assault and battery charges. Victim is family. Perpetrator is some UAE oil billionaire with diplomatic plates. Yeah, I know. Get to County General, we'll talk details." Second call, the club. "Church meeting tonight. Full patch only. We've got family business to handle." Third call, a contact at the Los Angeles Times. "Remember that favor you owe me? I've got a story for you. Billionaire assaults widow and child on public street. I've got witnesses, video, everything. Yeah, I'll send it all over." The wheels of justice, when properly motivated and backed by evidence and public outrage, could move with surprising speed. And Marcus "Ironhawk" Johnson, after 35 years in the Devil's Riders, knew exactly how to motivate them. 6 months later, federal courthouse, downtown Los Angeles. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity, standing room only, with overflow crowds gathered outside on the courthouse steps, watching on screens that local news had set up. What had started as a viral video of a billionaire assaulting a widow had exploded into an international scandal that touched on everything America loved to hate: wealth inequality, abuse of diplomatic privilege, racism, violence against women, and the exploitation of workers. Rashid Al-Mansour sat at the defense table in a $20,000 suit that did nothing to hide how much weight he'd lost, how his hands trembled slightly, how his once confident posture had collapsed into something resembling a hunted animal. His legal team, 8 attorneys from one of Los Angeles's most expensive firms, shuffled papers and whispered urgent strategies that everyone in the room knew were pointless. The evidence was overwhelming. The viral videos had been watched 400 million times across platforms. David Chen's restaurant footage showed the scratch already on the Mercedes before Amara approached. Maria Rodriguez's testimony had been devastating. Jennifer Walsh had flown back from Australia specifically to testify. But most damaging of all was the expert analysis showing that Rashid's actions fit a pattern. Investigators had found 17 other incidents over the past decade where he'd used violence and intimidation against service workers, usually women, usually minorities, always people he considered beneath him. Judge Patricia Blackwood, 56 years old with silver hair and a reputation for breaking powerful men who thought wealth made them untouchable, looked down from her bench with an expression carved from granite. "Mr. Al-Mansour, the jury has found you guilty on all counts: assault in the first degree, battery causing serious bodily injury, child endangerment, and hate crime enhancement. Before I pronounce sentence, do you have anything to say?" Rashid stood, his lawyer's hand on his arm, and for a moment it seemed like he might offer genuine remorse. Instead, "This is a travesty. I am being persecuted for my nationality, for my religion, for my success. That woman was—" "Sit down," Judge Blackwood said, her voice cutting through his protest like a blade through paper. "I've heard enough from you over these past months to last several lifetimes. Your lack of remorse, your continued attempts to blame the victim, your attitude that wealth entitles you to treat human beings like disposable objects, all of it has been noted and will be reflected in your sentence." She pulled out her reading glasses, consulted her notes, and began. "Rashid Al-Mansour, I hereby sentence you to 8 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Upon completion of your sentence, You will be permanently deported from the United States and barred from re-entry. Additionally, you are ordered to pay $5 million in compensatory damages to Amara Johnson, and an additional $10 million in punitive damages to be distributed among other victims of your abuse we've identified during investigation. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, cheers, the bang of the judge's gavel demanding order. Rashid collapsed in his chair as if he'd been shot, his face draining of color. 8 years. His business empire would crumble. His reputation was destroyed. His diplomatic immunity had been formally revoked by the UAE government, who'd thrown him under the bus the moment the videos went viral, and now he faced the same justice system he'd so casually dismissed 6 months ago. Hassan, Victor, and Omar had already been sentenced to 3 years each for their roles in the assault. The Mercedes Maybach had been seized and auctioned, with proceeds going to domestic violence charities. Al Mansour Oil Enterprises had lost over $500 million in contracts as companies scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. If this moment of justice made your heart soar, hit that subscribe button and smash that like button, because what happened next shows that karma isn't just about punishment. It's about redemption and healing. Drop a comment and tell me, should he have gotten more time? Outside the courthouse, Amara Johnson stood on the steps with Zuri beside her, both of them surrounded by Devil's Riders who'd come in full patch to witness justice being served. Marcus stood directly behind them, his hand on Amara's shoulder. Not possessive, but protective, supportive, family. The scar above Amara's eyebrow had faded to a thin white line that she no longer tried to hide. The terror in Zuri's eyes had slowly transformed over months of therapy into something closer to peace. And the cleaning uniform was gone, replaced by professional attire that reflected a life fundamentally changed. "How do you feel?" a reporter called out, microphone extended. Amara looked at the camera, at the dozens of journalists, at the crowd that had gathered to support her. "I feel like justice was served, not just for me and Zuri, but for every worker who's been abused by someone who thought money made them untouchable. For every mother who's had to choose between her dignity and her child's next meal. For everyone who's been told they don't matter because of how they look or what they do for a living." "What's next for you?" another reporter asked. "I've enrolled in nursing school," Amara said, her voice growing stronger. "It was always my dream before everything. The settlement money means Zuri and I have security. I can focus on education, on building the future I always wanted. And I'm working with advocacy groups to strengthen protections for service workers against abuse." Marcus leaned down slightly, speaking into the microphone cluster. "The Devil's Riders MC is also launching a fund for victims of workplace violence. We're partnering with legal aid organizations to provide free representation for workers who face assault or discrimination. Nobody should have to go through what my niece went through, and if they do, they shouldn't have to face it alone." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. A motorcycle club once viewed with suspicion and fear was now championing workers' rights and funding legal aid. But that was the thing about family, about loyalty, about the code that governed clubs like the Devil's Riders. They protected their own. And anyone who hurt family learned that consequences were real, inevitable, and absolutely merciless. 3 years later, Amara Johnson graduated from nursing school with honors, Zuri watching from the audience with Marcus beside her, both of them cheering louder than anyone else. She accepted a position at County General Hospital, the same hospital that had treated her injuries, specializing in trauma care. Every patient she treated, she saw herself. Every frightened child, she saw Zuri. And she poured into her work all the compassion and strength that had carried her through that nightmare day on Wilshire Boulevard. Zuri, now 8 years old, was thriving. The nightmares had eventually stopped. Therapy had given her tools to process the trauma. And being surrounded by the Devil's Riders, who treated her like a princess and taught her that real strength meant protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, had given her a family beyond just her mother. Rashid Al-Mansour served every day of his 8-year sentence at Terminal Island Federal Correctional Institution. In prison, money meant far less. Diplomatic status meant nothing. He was just another inmate, and the other prisoners, many of whom had been incarcerated for far less serious crimes, made sure he understood exactly what it felt like to be powerless. Upon his release, he was immediately deported to the UAE, where his reputation had been so thoroughly destroyed that even his family connections couldn't save his business empire. Al-Mansour Oil Enterprises had been dissolved, its assets sold off to pay debts and settlements. The man who'd once casually bragged about buying people now worked in his cousin's import business, a middle manager pushing papers, forbidden from ever returning to the country he'd treated as his personal playground. The viral video of his assault remained online, a permanent digital scar that ensured his name would forever be associated with cruelty, privilege, and the consequences that finally caught up. Every search of his name brought up the courtroom footage, the sentencing, the mugshot of a man who'd learned too late that money couldn't buy everything. But this story isn't really about Rashid Al-Mansour. It never was. It's about Amara Johnson, who refused to let trauma define her future, who took the worst day of her life and transformed it into fuel for building something better, not just for herself and Zuri, but for countless workers who face abuse and think they have no recourse, no power, no hope. It's about Marcus Ironhawk Johnson and the Devil's Riders MC, who proved that family means showing up when it matters, that loyalty means action, not just words, and that sometimes the most unlikely people become the fiercest advocates for justice. It's about little Zuri Johnson, who survived something no child should ever witness, who healed with love and support and therapy, and who's growing up knowing that her mother is a warrior, that her extended family would ride through hell for her, and that justice, real justice, is possible even when it seems impossible. On Saturday afternoons in downtown Los Angeles, Amara sometimes walks down Wilshire Boulevard with Zuri, past the spot where it all happened. The Grand Imperial Hotel is still there. The Bella Notte restaurant still serves pasta. Maria Rodriguez still sells flowers on the corner. But everything is different now. Amara walks with her head high, wearing scrubs with County General Hospital embroidered on the pocket. Zuri skips beside her in a new dress, not from a charity bin, but chosen together during a shopping trip, paid for with money that represents justice, recovery, healing. And often, Marcus rides alongside them on his Harley, the rumble of the engine a reminder that family is always watching, always protecting, always there. "Mommy," Zuri asked one day during one of these walks, "do you think that man ever thinks about what he did?" Amara stopped, knelt down to her daughter's level, and looked into those brown eyes that had seen too much too young but had found their light again. "I don't know, baby girl. I hope he does. I hope he learned that how you treat people, especially people who can't fight back, that's what defines who you really are. Not money, not power, not status, just how you treat people." "Do you forgive him?" It was a child's question, simple and profound. Amara considered it carefully. "I'm working on it. Forgiveness isn't about saying what he did was okay. It's about not letting what he did poison my future. It's about being free." Zuri nodded, processing this with the seriousness of someone far older than 8. Then she took her mother's hand. "I think you're the strongest person I know." "We're both strong," Amara said, squeezing that small hand. "We survived. We healed. We're building something beautiful from something terrible. That's real strength." As they continued their walk, as Marcus followed on his Harley, as the afternoon sun turned downtown Los Angeles golden, there was peace. Not the absence of pain, you never fully forget trauma, but the presence of healing, justice, love, and the knowledge that even in your darkest moment, you are not alone. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that justice is possible and that standing up to bullies matters, then do 3 things right now. Smash that subscribe button, Hit the like button so hard it breaks and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you believe in karma.